Good morning. Welcome to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Shane Matthews on a Monday morning. Hope everyone had a great weekend. We got a good show lined up for you today. We're going to have Chris Harry from FloridaGators.com join us, talk a little about state of the art, what he's hearing about college football, but mostly talk college basketball. Get his thoughts on Trey Mann and Andrew Nembhard entering the draft. Also, a couple of other extra signings of some transfers. And in the second portion of the program, we're going to be joined by Hall of Famer Lomas Brown, talking about his career and just got inducted into the 2020 College Football Hall of Fame. So if you got some questions or comments, you can shoot them to us on the Titan MR text line, 352-353-7465. And you can also shoot us a Facebook live comment, which is brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred business interruption attorneys. Before we get to Chris, we're going to go ahead and give you the play of the day, which is actually This Day in Sports, which is brought to you by Area Rug Masters. And is your whole family stuck at home and tracking in more than usual? Take your rugs to Area Rug Masters for a BOGO rug cleaning. When you mention the code Shane, call 352-448-5999. And today, This Day in Sports, in 2019, last year, the 145th run of the Kentucky Derby, the stewards disqualified first across the line maximum security for interference, and long shot Country House was declared your winner, the first DQ in race history for race infraction. And that was a big deal last year with the Kentucky Derby. We're still waiting on Chris Harry to join the program, and he must be having issues dialing in because he texted me about 5 minutes ago and said he was good to go. So we'll wait and see what's going on with Chris. Again, about 8:20, we will have Lomas Brown on the program. And I can't wait to talk to Lomas. Hadn't talked to him in many, many years, but probably, he played 18 years in the National Football League. That's got to be the longest of any Gator. That's a tremendous career, especially for an offensive lineman. I don't know how anybody can last that long. So waiting on Chris Harry to call in. In the meantime, like I said, not a whole lot going on in the world of sports. We're still waiting. Some universities are saying, I want to say it was the University of Iowa said that it was they were going to have athletes back on campus June 1st, and we're going to wait and see if that comes about or not. But I just got a text from Chris. He's having issues. So what we're going to do here is let's take a timeout here. Chris is trying to get in, and we're going to take our first time out. Apologize for it being so soon. But we're going to go ahead and get Chris Harry on the line. And when we come back, we'll talk to Chris Harry about Gator basketball. You're watching and listening to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios.
Time out! Time out! Hey! Time out! Time out! Time out! There we go. Good.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills.
Let's give them something to cheer for now.
Our Gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security, small enough to serve you, large enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Area Rug Masters, your #1 choice for rug cleaning. And Pound Hurt, preferred personal injury attorneys.
Our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Celebration Point Town Center, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, The Keys Grill and Piano Bar, UF Mover Guys, The Digital Mortgage Guy, Adams Ribs, Cloud9 Spa, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Center State Bank.
If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, potupwithshane.com, and click on the Advertise button or call Freddie Wiebe at 352-284-3733.
Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
He's looking, still looking. He's going for the end zone. He's got a touchdown.
Welcome back to Pod Up with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Little technical difficulties. We've made contact with Chris Harry. We're waiting to get him on the line here, and it should be here shortly. We got a couple of Facebook Live comments here brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred business interruption. Mary says, "Good morning from Crescent Beach." It's a beautiful morning. Yes, it is. And I think we have the one and the only Chris Harry on the line now. Chris, good morning.
I think I'm the one and the only. I don't know.
You are the one and the only.
I used to be more tech savvy than I have been this morning. So.
Well, I tell you, I'm the same way. But we got Chris Harry from FloridaGators.com, the senior writer. Chris, hope you and your family are being safe. Let's talk a little Gator basketball first. A lot of guys have declared they were coming back, but we had two guys, Andrew Nimhard and Trey Mann, that have declared for the draft. Your thoughts?
My thoughts is that one of the two has to leave because I'm sure you were going to follow up with a question regarding the addition of the Michigan transfer Colin Castleton last week, which became official. There was some buzz about that in the weeks leading up to that. But Florida now on the roster is at 14 scholarships. You can only have 13. I think obviously when Trey Mann went in, it was something of a surprise. The guy averaged 5 points a game, didn't get a lot of playing time, started games early on in the season, got that concussion up in UConn. I thought he was playing pretty well at the end of the season and then really, in just a limited role, really. I think he was probably playing around 16, 17 minutes a game late in the season and was starting to come into his own a little bit and figure some things out a little bit of how to play in that system. To the point with Andrew, he did this last year. I think he wants to play pro, and I know the professional basketball right now is a huge uncertainty. I think he's very well equipped and very mature relative to chances to play, whether it would be G League or overseas in the likely event that he would not be drafted. But I think that's where this is probably headed right now. Things could change. Things are always changing. There's always attrition. It seems like a lot of times it doesn't end. It takes months for it all to kind of shake itself out in an off season. And obviously this is an off season like none other so far.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So you think Nimhard will not be back in a Gator uniform?
Well, I'm just saying that if right now the situation is they're over, and yeah. Andrew played 2 summers with the Canadian national team. He's just a little different animal when it comes to these guys. He's being from Canada, being somebody he played alongside R.J. Barrett. He's played along some really, really good basketball players, some NBA Canadian basketball players. He played some in the World Championships last year during international basketball against some really good players. I think he's more in tune for that. Like I said, I think that not just physically but emotionally and mentally, he's more mature for that step. And I think that's something that he's been counting on a while. I think if he thought he would have been drafted last year, obviously he would have gone, but he wasn't. I don't think he's going to get drafted this year either, but I think he will have a chance to play professionally, however that shakes out, because who knows what overseas basketball, international basketball right now is going to look like.
We're speaking with Chris Harry. You can follow him at Gators Chris on Twitter. Chris, so if Nembhard does go pro, which you're basically thinking he is, who do you think is going to run the point next year?
Who do I think is going to run the point next year? I think the first guy would be Tyree Appleby. He's one of two guys who came in last year, sat out last year. Anthony DeRuggi is another one. You're going to like that guy a lot. He's athlete in the class of Keontae Johnson and maybe a notch below Scotty Lewis, but he can do some of the stuff that those guys do. But Tyree Appleby, transfer from Cleveland State. He averaged 17 points a game there. I think 5 assists a game. He can rebound the ball. He's athletic. He's fast. Trey Mann is a guy who will get a chance to play some of the point. I don't know if you guys remember this, but in the Tennessee game when Florida made its comeback, Andrew Nembhard was in foul trouble the whole time. Florida was down by 18. I want to say like right out of the box, maybe at halftime. And they worked that thing down with Trey Mann playing the point. And it was his defense, it was his energy combined with Scotty Lewis that really helped fuel that comeback. There's obviously Quez Glover can step into that position also. So there's 3 point guards right there. Niles Lane is a guy who's probably more of a combo guard. He's coming in as a freshman. I wouldn't know where to put him in that category right now. But I think the season was starting tomorrow. It's Tyree Appleby, it's Trey Mann, and then Quez Glover behind those two guys.
Tell us a little bit about what you know about the transfer from Michigan. I want to say, though, he has to sit out a year, correct?
He has to sit out a year, but like everybody, I mean, you know how this works. Every transfer that comes, they'll try to probably run a waiver through. Nowadays, it's like you're rolling dice with these waivers. Some guys get them and deserve them. Some guys get them that doesn't seem to deserve them. They have reasons. They don't have reasons. They petition for waivers and what have you, and you don't know how the NCAA is going to react. But I imagine they'll try to push that through. But I remember when he was on campus here for an official visit a couple summers ago before he signed with John Beilein. Florida offered him. It came down to this particular transfer. This particular transfer came down to Dayton and Maryland. So there's two good schools that wanted him. His numbers aren't jaw dropping. I think there's over 3 points a game, nearly 3 rebounds a game, playing mostly behind John Teske. I don't know if you remember him from Michigan. He's 7'1", 265-pound redwood tree that Gators had to face a couple years ago in the NCAA tournament. But this isn't a developmental kind of thing. I mean, if he could come in and play, he would play. And I think he needs to put on some weight, although he is 235, 240. They like his skill, his length, and he gives them another option in the 5. Now you got Omar Payne, who I would think is the heir in the 5 position. He's got some work to do, though, as we saw against Nick Richards late in the season. Jason Jatobo's coming back, and they have a JUCO, who I think is more of a developmental guy, in Osai Osifo, who's a JUCO, top 5 JUCO player from down in Brevard County.
So when you look at this team, and I know it's a long ways away, do you think the pieces are in place now? I know there was so much hype, in the preseason last year, and I don't know what the hype will be about this team this year. But this is going to be Mike's 6th year here. Do you think he's getting the pieces in place that he likes for his roster?
Well, candidly speaking, he thought he had really good pieces in place last year. And you mentioned the hype won't be anything near last. No, it won't. They didn't handle those very well, those expectations. And I think Mike White has even admitted that he didn't approach it maybe the way he should have. Maybe I remember Billy Donovan every year expectations of Sky. He tried to nix them. I don't know that playing into them and fortifying high expectations maybe wasn't good for a team last year that you're talking about 5 freshmen and 3 sophomores. Remember, 8 of the 9 guys in the rotation were underclassmen, with the exception of Kerry Blackshear, who everyone anointed as the SEC Player of the Year. I certainly bought into it, and he was a new guy. He was coming into a new situation. This team, and I'm going to assume Andrew. Let's just speak like if Andrew doesn't come back, I think this team will be built differently. They're going to be a faster and more athletic team than they had this past year. Andrew Nembhard is a really good point guard whose assist numbers are really, really good for his career. But he's a pace player. Kerry Blackshear, really good half-court player, post player. Guy could play it like all three levels. You want to play through him, but between those two guys, they're both, in my opinion, kind of pace players. I think the team that would come back in its current form, if I'm looking at this roster the way it is right now, and one of those two guys, Appleby or Trey Mann, or a third guy, Quez Glover, is playing point guard, Shane. I think it's going to be a team that with the potential to play at a different kind of tempo. And I'm sure that's something that will satisfy fans a little more. I know it's something that will satisfy you. You've always thought that Mike White's MO was to come in and just run up and down the court. And I don't think that that's necessarily a recipe for success in the SEC. I think you have to have a balance. I think Alabama showed us that last year, although that's a program that certainly was fun to watch last year. They didn't win a bunch of games in the Southeastern Conference either. So we'll see what happens where the direction this team is headed. But I wouldn't be surprised if their pace kicked up considerably in the metrics next season with this roster that they would have.
Our guest on the Titan MRI hotline is Chris Harry from FloridaGators.com, senior writer. You can follow him on Twitter at GatorsChris. Chris, a couple more questions for you here. Obviously, nobody's on campus. What would if the kids were here this summer? What would they be doing? Would they, obviously they'd be working out. I don't know how much they can practice or their drill work or what have you. But what are they doing now? I know they're probably doing Zoom calls with Mike White and his staff. Tell us a little bit about what's going on right now.
Well, yeah, they're doing some of that, but what they can't do is they can't, like, obviously these guys. What you're talking about every sport either. 'Cause I did a story on it earlier in the season. The strength and conditioning coaches have sent them workouts they can do at home. It's obviously not the real thing, and so all they can do what the strength and conditioning coach cannot monitor like a workout. He can't have a guy on watching him on video on a Zoom call and and coaching him through a cardio workout or something like that. That's not allowed by the NCAA. But they send them stuff that they can do. If they give them the lay of the land. Here's what I have access to. This park, these weights I have. Okay, and they'll do like a workout that's custom to them. Now, when they're allowed back, I don't know. If you're asked, if the way I'm hearing things, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if as things start to open a little bit here and there, the first wave of student athletes that could come back, maybe closer to the obviously the fall semester, and the only ones who'd be training, I would think, would be the fall semester teams, which would of course be football, soccer, volleyball, maybe a little bit cross country in there. So that's where we are right now. And it's funny, you get all these questions. The appropriate answer to everything is, I don't know, I'm not sure. And it's just different, and it's what we've been saying for the last 2 months, and it hasn't gotten there hasn't been much clarity to add to the whole thing. But these guys are in touch with their team, and they're staying in contact with them, and they're having Zoom calls and stuff, and trying to keep them as engaged as possible as they're at home.
Chris, last thing for you. Our next guest is going to be Lomas Brown. I know when you were down in the Tampa area, you covered him when the Bucs won the Super Bowl. Got any good stuff?
Love Lomas. I just knew that every time that I had a story, because Lomas, I want to say, so he would have been a first-round pick, I want to say in 85. So this was in 2002, and Lomas was the backup left tackle. I mean, he played mostly special teams, and remember this guy was a superstar for the Giants and for the Lions before that. I mean, I would go to him when I had perspective stories to tell stories about the way the NFL was, or kind of league-wide kind of stories, because I mean, he was a fabulous player who went up against some of the great players of the 80s, whether you're talking about Lawrence Taylor or what have you. He knew so much about the league at the time, and was such a good kind of culture guy for a locker room that, if you recall, Shane, had Warren Sapp, Keyshawn Johnson, Simeon Rice, Derek Brooks, John Gruden. I could go Rondé Barber. A lot of characters in that locker room, and he was kind of like a balancing act for that guy. A great guy, obviously one of the greatest Gator players in history. Part of those great 80s teams that so many old guard Gator fans look back on. So please tell Lomas. He may not remember me, but he remembered my face for sure. Give him my best, but the fact that he's going into the Hall of Fames and all these accolades coming his way at this time of his life. Good for him.
Yeah, we got to figure out a way to get him in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm surprised he hasn't been inducted into that yet.
Well, I mean, his name's on the ballot every year. I know that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Chris, we appreciate you joining the program, man. You and your family be safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Shane. I appreciate that. Take care.
That's Chris Harry from FloridaGators.com. Join us, talk a little Gator basketball. We're going to take another time out here. When we come back, we hope to be joined by College Football Hall of Famer Lomas Brown. We'll be right back. You're listening and watching to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios.
Time out! Time out! Hey! Time out! Time out! Time out! There we go. Good.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills.
Let's give them something to cheer for now.
Our Gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security, small enough to serve you, large enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Area Rug Masters, your #1 choice for rug cleaning. And Pound Hurt, preferred personal injury attorneys.
Our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Celebration Point Town Center, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, The Keys Grill and Piano Bar, UF Mover Guys, The Digital Mortgage Guy, Adams Ribs, Cloud9 Spa, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Center State Bank.
If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, potupwithshane.com, and click on the advertise button or call Freddie Wiebe at 352-284-3733.
Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
He's looking, still looking. He's going for the end zone. He's got a touchdown.
Welcome back to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. I want to thank Chris Harry for joining the program. We're now going to go to our Titan MR hotline, and we're joined by 2020 College Football Hall of Famer and former Gator great Lomas Brown. Good morning, Lomas. Welcome to the program. How are you?
How you doing today?
I'm doing great, buddy. I appreciate you taking the time to join us. The Gator Nation was excited that I was going to have you on. We promoted it. Let's first of all, I want to congratulate you on being inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. Tell us kind of how that all happened, where you were when you found out.
Man, actually, I was at home and a little box. FedEx delivered a little box to the house. Didn't know what the box was because I'm Lomas Brown and my son is Lomas Brown III. So I actually thought it was for him. Took a chance and opened the box and seen a football in there and the inscription on the football was saying, you know, welcome to the club. You've been selected to go into the College Football Hall of Fame. And man, I was just so excited because I know I had been up the last couple of years and hadn't made it. And just to cross that threshold and make it into the College Football Hall of Fame, it's just been exciting. I really didn't know, Shane, I really didn't know that few guys have been in there, put into the Hall of Fame, the College Hall of Fame. You know, I thought the NFL Hall of Fame was something, but out of 5 million guys, only 1,000 guys, a little over 1,000 guys in the College Hall of Fame. It's just incredible, and I'm just so thankful to be one of those guys inducted.
No doubt about it. Let's go way, way back to your days at Miami Springs High School.
Ooh, you are going back.
I don't think a lot of people realize you didn't start playing football till like maybe 10th grade, and you were a member of the band, correct?
Yes, I was. I would have been the biggest trombone player in America, Shane. Yeah, I was in the band, had made it up to second chair in the band playing the trombone. And I remember my first day of high school, I went in, signed up for all my classes. I'm walking out the auditorium. Somebody says, "Hey," I turn around, it's the principal of the school, and he comes up to me and he asked me, had I signed up for varsity sports? And I was like, no. So he just grabbed me by the arm and took me back in the auditorium, and he signed me up for varsity sports, which turned out to be football. And, you know, I was always the type of person, I didn't like to disappoint people. So I went out there. Didn't want to go, but I went out there. And like they say, Shane, the rest is history. Just loved the game, just fell in love with the game, and just continued to play it. And that's been it for me. That's been my calling card pretty much my whole life, football.
What I like to ask guys, all the athletes, you know, did you always want to be a Gator? What other schools did you think about going to? And who is the main guy that recruited you to come to the University of Florida?
The main guy was Mike Brown. He's passed since, but his name was Mike Brown, and he was like, man, I'm telling you, I would see him almost every day at the house, man. Very good guy. He turned out to be one of my best friends ever. One of my longest friends that I've known, because I met Mike back when I was 15 years old at Miami Springs Senior High School. So he was the main recruiter. And, you know, I actually was going to go to the University of Pittsburgh. Me and Bill Frillick took our visit up there together. But what happened was my dad had a heart attack the last game of my senior year. And then I decided to stay closer to home. I decided that I needed to be closer just to help my family out. And that's why I didn't end up going to the University of Pittsburgh. And I wanted to get out of Miami. I wanted to get a change of scene from Miami. And that was one of the reasons I didn't stay and go to the University of Miami. So Florida was 5 hours up the road. They were building the program. And it looked cool to have a Gator on the side of your helmet. So that was my choice there. And it was a great choice. I had a great 4 years at the University of Florida.
Our guest on the Titan MRI hotline is College Football Hall of Famer Lomas Brown. You can follow him on Twitter at Lomas75. Lomas, talk a little bit about those 80 teams coached by Charlie Pell and Galen Hall. I mean, there was so much talent. You know, the Great Wall of yourself, Zimmerman, Bromley, Crawford Kerr. Just talk a little bit about what it was like, especially let's first talk about the Great Wall, because, you know, the offensive linemen, y'all hang together. You have a great bond. Just talk about the Great Wall.
Well, just to put into context how the Great Wall came about, basically you had to be able to bench press over 400 pounds, and you had to be able to leg press over 700 pounds to be considered. And when I was the last piece, the last brick to get put into the wall, you know, all the other guys, they lifted weights. They were weightlifters when they came into the University of Florida. I had to learn how to lift weights, so I was behind the curve. But I just remember my senior year in the weight room, and I had everybody, man, everybody was in there cheering me on. And I remember jacking up 410 pounds to finally get over that hump, to finally complete that wall. And that was one of the best offensive lines I ever blocked with, man. All of us were great friends. We almost had an unspoken language on the offensive line. And we were a close-knit group. We really were. And that's how you have to be if you want to be a successful offensive line. And I think a lot of things, Shane, we rallied together because of practices. I'm serious. I think that was our rallying cry. If anybody has ever seen the movie The Junction Boys, it talks about how Alabama practices were under Bear Bryant. And, of course, Coach Charlie Pell played for Bear Bryant. He was under Coach Bear Bryant. So those practices, man, were tough. He would be up in the up high in the sky, looking down on you like Bear Bryant used to do. And I'm talking about those practices were practices to mentally see if you could handle the pressure. And it was a lot of pressure each and every day. And I do think, Shane, that's the reason why I was able to step into the NFL and play as well as I played my first years, because of all the stuff that I went through at the University of Florida, all the hard practices we went through. I was kind of used to it once I got to the pro level. So it was great for me to go under that program, under Charlie Pell and Coach Galen Hall. And that's my guy, man. Coach Galen Hall, one of the most brilliant coaches that I've ever played for. A great man, too. He was great to play for, even though it was only briefly a year for me.
We got a comment question here on Facebook Live brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred business interruption attorneys. Lorraine says, Charlie Pell's prediction of Lomas's professional career was spot on. I would love to hear what Lomas has to say about Charlie. You kind of spoke to it, but just what did Charlie Pell mean to Lomas Brown?
He meant discipline to Lomas Brown. He really did. Coach was a tough man. You were always intimidated by Coach, especially when you went in his office, because his desk would sit higher. He would sit his desk up on a little podium. So you were sitting down, and it was like you were looking up at him sit at his desk. It was almost looking up at the sky. He always had that thing where he wanted you to look up to him, or he was bigger than life. But again, the toughness that Coach Pell taught us. He taught us about no excuses, that you don't have excuses in this game. You don't use excuses in this game, and that you go out each and every time and you fight as hard as you can. Regardless of the outcome, you go out there and give your all out on the field. And that's the thing that I loved about Coach the most. But what I loved about Ward Pell, his wife, was she was the loving part. She was the motherly part that came in. Coach was a tough disciplinarian that stayed on you all the time, but you could always count on Ward Pell to come there and give you a hug, cook you a meal, say something comforting to you to help you get through the day. So it was a great combination, him and his wife, and I appreciated being up under Coach Pell.
Jeff on Facebook Live has a comment question. Want you to talk about the locker room after the Kentucky victory for the SEC title.
Oh, man, Shane, just the plane ride. So that was a tough game. That was one of our toughest games. It was definitely the coldest game that I had played in as a collegiate in Kentucky. It was our toughest game. We barely beat them to win the SEC. But, man, I remember the plane ride. Once we got close to Gainesville and got close to the stadium, the pilot came on air and on the airway and said that, look, we're going to do it twice. We're going to go over the stadium twice. And we did that, man. He flew over the stadium, and you could just see all the people in the stadium, man. And it was just it was just awesome, man, especially being a 17, 18-year-old, just winning the first SEC for the school. And we knew how bad that the school wanted the SEC, wanted to win an SEC title, and to be the first team to legitimately win it, even though it got stripped from us, we still felt like we were the first team to win the SEC for the University of Florida. And a lot of us guys, when I talked to them today, Pat Millers, the Ricky Williams, all the guys that I played with, we still hold that true and dear to our heart that we were the first ones to win the SEC title, and it shouldn't have been stripped away. It's stripped away from the record books, but it'll never be stripped away from us because we know we went out there and got it done.
No doubt. Talk a little bit about, as we mentioned, the talent on those teams that you played on in your backfield. You had Neil Anderson, who's going to be on my show tomorrow, John L. Williams, all these first-round running backs. What was it like blocking for those guys?
It was awesome. It was awesome, and it was so good because it was always a different change of pace. You got Charlie Neal that come in. We call him Charlie, but you got Neal that come in, and he could give you both. He could give you the inside, and he could give you the outside game. Run with power inside and get outside. You had John L. Williams, who was, man, a punishing fullback but had hands like a wide receiver. Janelle could catch anything. And then Lorenzo Hampton, man, Lowe was our home run hitter. Lowe was the guy that we always tried to get outside because we knew with his speed, if we ever got him outside clean, it was gone. You had Ricky Nattil on that team. Again, you had us from the Great Wall of Florida. You had Kerwin Bell on that team, on the last team that I was on. And then that's just on the offensive side. You look at the defensive side of it with Tim Newton, who went to the league, and Pat Miller, and all the Alonzo Johnson. And, you know, it's just so many names of guys that played at such a high level. We had a lot of talent back in the 80s on our teams there, and we played hard. That was the one thing you never had to worry about us doing, is playing hard. So that was the thing that really, I think, that kind of almost helped establish Florida football and get it on the right footing. Of course, Coach Spurrier just took it to another level. But I think we kind of helped put the foundation there so you could build upon it for years to come.
We're speaking with Lomas Brown on the Titan MR hotline. You can follow Lomas on Twitter at LomasBrown75. So Lomas, you get drafted. I think you're the 6th pick in the first round by the Detroit Lions. You make your home up there now. I believe you're a color commentator for their radio broadcast. Talk a little bit about your Detroit career. And I will say this, you played 18 years, which is, I don't think people understand how crazy that is, especially for an offensive lineman. Okay, I got in 14 years, but I'd hardly even played. But your years in Detroit, I'm telling you, I have never in my life seen a running back like Barry Sanders. And I don't think I know people appreciated what he did, but when you saw it on field level, it was just remarkable. Talk a little bit about your career in Detroit and what Barry Sanders meant to you, and what a tremendous running back he was.
Oh my gosh! I mean, he's the reason why I'm being considered for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. While I'm a nominee for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, let me start by saying this: just as great as he was as a football player, probably a greater person. I'm serious, Shane. He's a guy that you would run through a brick wall for. I blocked for him for 7 of his 10 years. And in the 7 years that I blocked for him, and Barry took some negative runs, a lot of negative runs. Not once did I ever see him get up and point a finger at an offensive lineman and say anything negative. And like I say, he took a lot of negative runs, not because of him. A lot of them was because of us offensive linemen, but he never once finger pointed. He was never like that, a kind guy. So to me, he was a guy that you would do anything for to make sure he had success out on the field. I know myself and Kevin Glover, we had a rule, and Kevin Glover was our great center that played for the Lions from the University of Maryland. And our rule was Barry would never have to get up off the ground by himself. Either I was going to be there to help him up, or Kevin Glover was going to be there to help them up, because he worked so hard for us. We figured the least we could do is be downfield, make sure guys not giving him the extra business like they like to do under the pile, but also make sure he don't have to spend no energy trying to get up off the ground. That's what we were there for. To try to make his life a little easier if we could, but just a great person. And people say I'm biased when I say he's the greatest running back that I know I've ever played with and that I've ever seen. People say I'm biased because I blocked for him for 7 or 10 years, but some of the stuff, Shane, we used to see on Monday mornings when you watching film, it used to be at least 4 or 5 times every Monday. You would be on there and you would watch something on film and you'd be like, oh my goodness, how did he do that? I mean, every Monday it would be 4 or 5 plays that your mouth would just fall wide open, just watching some of the things he did. So like I say, a great running back. Everybody could see that on film and go back and YouTube him and do all the things like that, but even a greater person. And that's why my affection for Barry Sanders runs as deep as it does.
We got a text here for you on the Titan MR text line. It comes from Jonathan. Jonathan wants to know, Lomas, who was the most difficult defensive lineman you had to face in your 18-year career?
It was three guys. Lawrence Taylor, he was number one, had to face him 3 times. Oh, my goodness. The mental pressure that man puts on you. I mean, preparing for him, man, you mentally worn out by the time Sunday comes around, just even thinking about and preparing for him. Richard Dent from the Chicago Bears, he was number 2, man. He was awesome, man. A 270-pound guy that can run you over, run around you, do whatever he wanted to do with you. And, of course, the third person was Chris Dolman, the late Chris Dolman, Minnesota Vikings defensive end. Came in the same year I came in. Me and him had some hellacious battles, man, with him in Minnesota and me in Detroit twice a year for 11 years. He was a great player. And if you want to throw in my honorable mention, I could throw in Derek Thomas and I could throw in Bruce Smith. You know, playing that left tackle position, man, you got to face the best of the best each and every weekend. And that's what I had to do. But it was a pleasure facing those guys because it brought out the best in you.
We got a question here, another text from Franklin, and it goes back to your Gator days. He wants to know, what was the greatest moment in your Gator career?
Oh, that's a great question. Probably the greatest moment, besides winning the SEC, wow, that's a great question right there. I probably would say when we beat Georgia and Auburn back-to-back in my senior year. Because Georgia had just had our number. Vince Dooley and them had just been kicking our butt. Herschel Walker, you know, they just been beating us down. And we were going into our 4th year, and I had never beaten them. And our 4th year, we shut them out. We shut them out. We beat Auburn that year. We were just on a roll. And I just think us getting over that hump of beating Georgia, Vince Dooley, and Herschel Walker, I think right now, off the top of my head, that's probably one of my greatest moments. I'm quite sure I got some other ones, but just off the top of my head, I probably would say beating those guys because they seemed like I didn't think I was going to ever beat them while I was in school. And, of course, we just stomped Florida State. So I beat Florida State 4 times while I was there. So they weren't much of a competition back then.
We got another comment here. On Facebook Live, brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred business interruption attorneys. Jeff wants you to talk a little bit about the throwing Mayo and Kerwin Bell, who I want to say was a walk-on freshman that kind of started in 84.
Yes, Country. His nickname was Country for us because he had that long, drawn-out country accent. But, man, you're right, a freshman that stepped in there, and, man, he stepped in like a vet. He just stepped right on in and blended in with us perfectly. I think, you know, again, we had a lot of seniors. Jeff Zimmerman was the only underclassman on our offensive line. So, you know, we had a lot of maturity up there where we could handle having a young quarterback back there. And, you know, you always know that young quarterbacks are going to make mistakes and have ups and downs, but you didn't see a lot of that out of Kerwin. When he got in there, like I said, it just seemed like he fit in like a hand in the glove, man. He was always a quiet guy by demeanor, but his game spoke real loudly out on the field. And, you know, Kerwin, if he was to take a hit, that's when I would see him get mad. That's when you see him, you know, get mad and really concentrate on what he had to do. So he was like the perfect fit for us at that time with some of the injuries that we had going into that season. Kerwin was the man, and he stepped up and stepped in there like he was a true senior, man. It was so impressive to watch what he did his freshman year.
Lomas, I wanted to ask you, you know, they got the Last Dance documentary going on about the Bulls
yes.
right now. You were the Bad Boys. That was all happening while you
were. those were my guys there, man. I still talk to Rick Mahorn. He's one of my closest friends. Know Isaiah, Joe Dumars, all those guys back then. Those were my guys. That was the era. They used to practice at the Silverdome with us. So when we were in there practicing, they would be in there. So we would see these guys all the time. But just, it was just the intensity that these guys played with, that Chuck Daly, how he took that team to another level, how the bad boys were embraced in Detroit. When I first got in Detroit, the Tigers had won the World Series. So, everybody, the Tigers had the city. Then in 89 and 90, it was all bad boys. They ran the city, and everybody embraced the bad boys because, again, I think it's a bias against Detroit sports. And I've always said that. I always thought that people look at Detroit sports differently from the outside looking in. And they look at us like a lot of thugs, or that city, that's a bad city. But really, man, we got some hard-working people here, and there's some hard-working folks that play sports here. And it's just a lot of pride with the sports teams here. Now, the Lions, we haven't held up our bargain yet because we're one of the only teams that have never gone to the Super Bowl. But the rest of the sports teams here, they've held up their bargain. So hopefully the Lions will get on board and we can hold up our end of the bargain. But the bad boys, that's what Detroit is synonymous with. They're known for the bad boys. And those guys, they were a tough, gritty group of guys that played some hard-nosed basketball back in the 80s.
We're speaking with Lomas Brown here on the Titan MR Hotline, 2020 College Football Hall of Fame inductee. Lomas, as I mentioned, 18 years in the National Football League was just – and you ain't a kicker. You are in the – but, and you finally got a Super Bowl ring with the Bucks. But what allowed you to last that long? Because I don't think people realize the average career of an NFL player is like 2.5 years. And here you are, left tackle, and you last 18 years. That is just phenomenal.
Yeah, it was, Shane. But first of all, blessings. You know that because you got to be lucky. You got to be lucky. Believe me, I escaped some situations that I didn't think I was going to escape. I've had some injuries that I thought would be a lot more serious than they turned out to be. So I was lucky and blessed to be able to play that long. I think the other thing that helped me too was, as you get older, you have a tendency, especially offensive linemen, we have a tendency of getting heavier as you get older while you're playing in the league. For me, I went the opposite way. The older I got, I played lighter in the league. My first 6 years, I was about 300 and some odd pounds, probably about 310. My first 6 years in the league. My last 12 years in the league, I played between 275 and 280 because I was having knee problems. And anytime I got over 280, my knees would start hurting. So I had to play between that weight. The thing that it did for me, Shane, and I think what helped me, my first 6 years, I was a mauler because I was 310 pounds. So I was just mauling guys, trying to be a mauler in the league. My last 12 years, I had to be a technician because I wasn't 300 pounds. I couldn't just brutally move a guy out of there. I had to use technique, the proper technique to move a guy out of there. And I think that's what helped me. I think that helped me to play either way I had to play. Either I could be a brute when I had to be or have to be, or I could be a technician when I have to be. And I think being able to play both ways, I think that helped me with my longevity in the NFL. And you're right. And think about this. Just think about now they're talking about adding another game on to the season, an 18th game. And some of the stats that I seen was that by adding just one more game, adding that one more game to the season, it's going to take guys' careers from I think it was 3.4 years down to 2.8 years. Just by adding one game. So, when you hear the big wigs in the NFL talk about safety, no, it's about money. It's about the dollar bill first. safety second with these players. So, it's just some things that you see and you witness while you're in the league, but it's things that you see and you witness when you're out of the league too.
Yeah, you're speaking at 310 pounds. Talk a little bit about how the pro football game, especially in the interior guys, has changed, because honestly, 310 pounds ain't very big these days. As big
That's
as
right. You're right. That's almost a glorified tight end or fullback. Now you're right about that. 310 is small. I mean, to put it this way, I played at 310. The left tackle Taylor Decker for the Detroit Lions nowadays, he's 6'7", 340 pounds, and it's not fat. It's not fat. It's muscle, and it's just all human being at that size. So you can see how it has just evolved. It's just evolved. I walk out there sometime, and quarterbacks are looking me eye to eye now, and I'm 6'4.5", and you just look at the size of these guys now. The sheer size, speed of the game. There's a lot of things that are different from when we played the game. Now, we do know it's still the basic fundamentals: blocking, tackling, catching, running. That's still the basic fundamentals of things. But these guys are just so much more bigger, so much more athletic than we were back in the day. I think back in the day, we took our technique and our craft a lot more serious than they do. I think a lot of these guys today, they rely more on their athletic ability than anything else, than technique and having the fundamentals down. I think they just rely on pure athleticism. But back in the day, I just think we took our game to another level because we tried to hone our craft, which was your technique.
Yep. Last thing for you here, Lomas. Ben on Facebook Live, brought to you by Pound Hurt, your preferred business interruption attorneys. Ben says Bruce Matthews is the only NFL lineman to play more games than Lomas Brown. That is crazy. So, and we also have some folks here wanting to know what we got to do to get Lomas Brown into Canton, Ohio.
You know what? I know. That's my dream. That's my dream, is to be able to get into the Hall of Fame, National Hall of Fame. And I know it happens slow. For offensive linemen, it don't happen a lot. Look at Emmitt Smith, the great offensive line Emmitt had. He only got one guy in the Hall of Fame right now. So I know it takes a while because we don't have stats like the other guys. But I'm just hoping that one day people will be watching Barry Sanders run down the field, and they'll take a glance and be like, ooh, who's that big number 75 running behind him? And maybe they'll be like, okay, he had to have some help to become one of the greatest running backs ever. So maybe they'll take a look and see who was in front of the little fella helping them to get those yardage.
Well, there's no doubt about it. I will say this: you will be the next Gator to go in the Ring of Honor here, though. They're going to have number 75 up there. Now that you're in the College Football Hall of Fame, Lomas Brown will be up in the swamp. So
I'll tell you what, Shane, that'll be an honor too, man, because think about it. There's not that many guys up in the ring at the University of Florida. So to me, that would be a prestigious honor if that ever happened.
Well, it should, because one of the criteria is, if you get into the College Football Hall of Fame, you go into the Ring of Honor. So we'll be looking forward to when that day happens. But in the meantime, buddy, hope you and your family stay safe up there in Michigan. We really do appreciate you joining the program. It was awesome. And we'll talk to you soon, Lomas.
Absolutely, Shane. Anytime, man. Take care of yourself.
Yes, sir. That's the great Lomas Brown joining us on the Titan MR hotline, and the greatest offensive lineman to ever play here at the University of Florida, and deserves to be in the National Football Hall of Fame. And we hope that happens here pretty soon. Great show. I want to thank Chris Harry for joining the program, and obviously Lomas Brown. Tomorrow's show, we got the great Buddy Martin joining us. And then we're going to have, as he said, Charlie Neal Anderson, number 27 running back for the Gators, went on, had a great career with the Chicago Bears. So be safe out there, folks. We will talk to you tomorrow. Take care.